In a forgotten kingdom that once lay at the edge of a vast twisted forest, there was a young princess named Mariela. Though the youngest of her father's children, she was the one most adored by the people for her beauty, charm, and kind heart. But despite her royal status, she often felt trapped by the suffocating walls of her castle and the strict rules of the court. Beneath her graceful demeanor, Mariela longed for adventure, for something beyond the endless lessons and politics that made up her life. Her heart had always been drawn to the stories whispered by the old servants, tales of magic and darkness that lay just beyond the palace walls. And though she was warned to stay away from the ancient well that lay at the edge of the kingdom's garden, she felt an inexplicable pull toward it, an attraction she could not quite explain. The well was no ordinary structure. Long ago, before the kingdom rose to power, it had been the center of a long-forgotten realm, a portal between the mortal world and something far darker. The old sorceress who once ruled that land had left the well as her mark, a remnant of the ancient power she wielded. It was said that the waters of the well held the spirits of those who had crossed her, trapped for eternity. But none of this mattered to Mariela. Not on that fateful afternoon when she found herself wandering beyond the garden walls, seeking respite from the endless courtly duties. Her golden ball, a gift from her late mother, sparkled in her hands as she played with it, tossing it into the air and marveling at how the sunlight reflected off its polished surface. As she neared the well, a careless throw sent the ball tumbling from her fingers. She gasped as it slipped into the air and disappeared into the depths of the well. Her heart sank when she heard it splash far below. Frantic, Mariela rushed to the well's edge and peered into the darkness, but the water was black as ink, and the ball was gone. Despair washed over her as she realized her prized possession was lost forever. Just as her eyes began to well with tears, a croaky voice echoed from the depths of the well. "Why do you cry, princess?" Startled, Mariela stepped back. "Who speaks to me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am but a humble creature, cursed to live beneath these waters," the voice rasped. "But I can help you, princess, if you will do something for me in return." A cold breeze passed through the trees as the surface of the water rippled. Then, from the darkness, a large, grotesque frog emerged, its body slick with slime, its eyes wide and unblinking. Mariela recoiled at the sight of it. "You?" she stammered, disgust lacing her words. "Yes, me," the frog croaked, his voice almost too human. "I can retrieve your golden ball. But first, you must promise to take me with you to the palace. Let me sit beside you, eat from your plate, and sleep upon your pillow." Mariela hesitated. The frog was hideous. Surely she could not bear to keep such a creature near her. But her love for the golden ball outweighed her revulsion. After all, how could a mere frog hold her to such a promise? "Very well," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Bring me my ball, and I shall do as you ask." The frog nodded and vanished back into the depths of the well. Moments later, he returned with the golden ball clutched delicately in his mouth. He tossed it onto the grass, and Mariela seized it, cradling the treasure against her chest. But as she turned to leave, the frog spoke again. "Do not forget your promise, princess." Mariela ignored him, quickly retreating to the safety of the palace walls. She convinced herself that he could not possibly follow her, and even if he did, what harm could a simple frog do? That night, As Mariela dined with her father and sisters in the grand hall, a strange knocking echoed through the stone corridors. It was soft at first, but soon grew louder, reverberating through the chamber until the very doors of the dining hall shuddered with the sound. The king gestured to a servant to open the door. When the great wooden door creaked open, there sat the frog, his bulbous eyes staring directly at Mariela. "Princess," he croaked loudly, "I've come to claim what was promised." Mariela's face drained of color as her family looked to her in confusion. She tried to explain herself, but the king, a man of stern principles, frowned. "A royal promise is not to be broken, daughter. You must honor your word." Reluctantly, Mariela invited the frog to the table, her stomach turning as he hopped beside her chair. He insisted on eating from her plate, his slimy tongue flicking at her food with each bite. Every moment felt like an eternity, the sight of the frog's grotesque form making her ill. After the meal, the frog demanded more of her promise. "Now, princess, let me sleep upon your pillow as you said you would." Mariela protested, but the king's firm glare left her no choice. With a heart heavy with disgust, she carried the frog to her chambers and placed him on the pillow beside her bed. That night, as she lay in the dark, the frog's slow, wet breathing filled the room. She closed her eyes tightly, trying to block out the sound, but sleep eluded her. When she finally did drift off, Mariela was plagued by strange, terrifying dreams. In them, she stood before the well, but it was no longer filled with water. Instead, an abyss yawned beneath her feet, a black void stretching into eternity. From the depths, shadowy figures reached out, their faces pale and expressionless. Among them, she saw something worse, an image of herself standing beside the frog, but her reflection's eyes were hollow, her skin pale and cracked. As she reached out toward the reflection, the ground beneath her gave way, and she tumbled into the void, consumed by darkness. She awoke with a start, her breath shallow. The frog still lay beside her, staring with unblinking eyes. The next day, the frog followed Mariela everywhere. No matter how she tried to escape him, he always found her, his demands becoming more insistent. She could not bear his presence any longer. That evening, as they sat alone in the royal garden, the frog croaked again. "Princess, if you care for me, just one kiss is all I ask." Mariela's stomach turned at the thought, but deep down she felt an unshakable pull, as though some ancient magic had bound her to the creature. Reluctantly, with trembling hands, she leaned down and pressed her lips to the cold, slimy skin of the frog. As soon as their lips touched, a violent wind tore through the garden, swirling leaves and dust into the air. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and the sky darkened unnaturally. The frog began to writhe and shift, its body twisting and stretching in unnatural ways. Bones cracked loudly, echoing through the still night as the frog transformed. Mariela stepped back in horror, expecting to see a prince, as the tales always promised. But the creature that now stood before her was not a man. It was a hideous mockery of human form, tall, gaunt, its skin still slick with slime, its eyes hollow and cold. "Thank you, princess," the creature said, its voice low and dark. "You have freed me, but the curse was never meant to be broken so easily." Mariela's heart raced. "What are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The creature smiled, a twisted grin that sent a chill down her spine. Once, long ago, I was a prince, cursed by a sorceress for my greed. But each time I am freed from this form, the curse passes to another. And now, it is your turn. Before she could scream, the creature lunged at her, wrapping its cold, slimy hands around her throat. The world around her spun as she was dragged into the darkness, her vision fading as she felt herself falling deep into the abyss that had once been the well. Days passed, and the kingdom fell into mourning. The king declared his beloved daughter missing, assumed lost in the forest. But those who knew the palace whispered of strange occurrences. How, after Mariela's disappearance, a golden frog with haunting eyes was seen near the well, croaking softly to anyone who would listen. One day, a young girl from the village, playing near the palace grounds, lost her favorite toy, a golden ball, down the well. As she leaned over to peer into the depths, a voice, croaky and soft, echoed from below. "Why do you cry, little one?" As Mariela's consciousness awakened inside the frog's form, she found herself trapped, like the prince before her. But unlike those before her, Mariela retained fragments of her mind. She began to sense the well's dark power, how it connected to the ancient magic of the forest. The dark realm beyond the well wasn't empty. It was home to the court of the cursed, former sorcerers who had once wielded unimaginable power but were now bound to the curse. Each one represented a different sin: envy, greed, betrayal. And they too had been transformed into monstrous forms. Mariela learned that to break free, she would have to gather the remnants of their magic, hidden in their grotesque bodies. But each fragment came at a cost, drawing her deeper into the curse's dark origins. Far from the kingdom, in the depths of the forest, lived an outcast healer named Sarah. Once an apprentice to the sorceress who cast the curse, she had long sought a way to undo the terrible magic that had trapped so many innocent souls. When she heard whispers of Mariela's fate, she knew the time had come to intervene. Sarah made her way to the kingdom, seeking the well and the cursed frog, knowing that Mariela might be the key to finally ending the curse. But the price for breaking it would be high, perhaps too high for anyone to bear. With Sarah's help, Mariela, still trapped in the frog's form, began to unravel the true nature of the curse. To destroy the well and end the curse for good, Mariela would have to sacrifice her own soul. The well was a portal between realms, and to close it forever, she would need to sever the connection, ensuring no one else could ever fall victim to the curse. In a final battle against the court of the cursed and the lingering spirit of the sorceress, Mariela chose to sacrifice herself, destroying the well and banishing the sorceress's power once and for all. Though the curse was broken, Mariela did not return to her former life. Instead, her spirit was transformed into something new, a guardian of the forest, watching over the kingdom from the shadows, ensuring that the dark forces of the past never rose again. As for Sarah, the healer lived on, passing down the story of Mariela's sacrifice, ensuring that the kingdom would never forget the price of their peace. The well was gone, but the forest remained dark, twisted, and filled with ancient magic that would never truly disappear. Thank you for joining us in the world of Twilight Fables. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more.